Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. I hope you guys are doing well. Man, it is starting to feel a lot like fall here in Texas. The weather is so nice and cool. I am loving it. And we are in the trenches with application season. We actually think last time I looked, we have almost 200, over 200 college completed college admission applications submitted. And then we are also quickly pivoting to those scholarship applications as well. I have a list of questions here that I want to answer for you guys. But before I do that, pro tip. There is a difference in terms of the writing style you should apply for the main essay and the short answer question. The purpose is different for both of these pieces of writing. That main essay is going to be received by every single college and university, and it's around 650 words of prime time real estate. And the purpose of that is reflection and discovery. It's insight into who you are. Whereas the short answer questions are specific to the universities you're applying to. So your writing strategy is different. It's based off of research, content that you have collected about that university during a tour, during a meet and greet with an admissions officer, information you've reviewed online through the department, and so forth. So colleges and universities are looking for specific anecdotes as to why you want to attend their school. So no need to recite or repeat why you want to go into a particular field of study or anything that is specific to a university in the main essay when all colleges will be reading that. And again, you want to steer clear of generalizations inside the short answer questions if you're working on something that is going to be quite competitive, which should be all of you. Now, 3 questions that I wanted to answer because these tend to be pretty common. This is from Noni, who is the parent of a sophomore. And her question is, if you go to an extremely competitive high school and you have extremely high grades and rigorous course loads, how is that taken into account with the top 10% rule if you are below that mark? Well, you know, all high schools are different, and this is a good question. And, you know, some high schools have access to resources that other high schools don't. And this can be in the form of, you know, the different type of rigorous curriculum, APs, IB programs, clubs, organizations, different levels of math. Some schools have multivariable calculus. Other schools, the highest level of math would be possibly BC calculus, and so forth. So Noni, the reality is that, you know, you are being evaluated within the context of your high school. Your teenager is going to be compared with the other peers. And the expectation is that if your teen is attending a very rigorous high school, that they're able to keep up, that they are able to stand out in a very competitive applicant field. Now, you asked a very pointed question about that top 10% rule. So when you're attending very competitive high schools, and I'll give a shout out to Westlake and LASA and Westwood, just a few of the schools in Austin that we work a lot with, UT, and these are very competitive high schools, I should add, UT will make room to go far outside the top 6% of the high school class for those that have exceptional fit to major, evidence of that intellectual curiosity. So while class rank is important, and we know that had you attended a much less competitive high school, you would likely have been in the top 10%. Admissions officers are very compassionate towards that. They know that the standard for excellence is a lot higher at some schools versus the other. The reality is, state law is still state law. The cutoff is top 6% for UT, top 10% for any other public school. But there is some grace that is going to be provided for your teenager, but they still got to work hard, and the expectation is that they are taking more rigorous courses, but they should be taking classes that they feel good about, and classes that they feel confident they can get great grades in. Garrett, who is a senior parent, it's crunch time, Garrett, in the common data set for UT, what parameters are more important than others? For example, is GPA more important than test scores, or what about the essays? This is a good question, Garrett, and you may have attended some of my presentations before because it sounds like you are digging into the CDS. For those of you that don't know what the CDS is, many colleges, most colleges will release a lot of institutional data, particularly as it relates to the admissions department. So you can literally Google any institution and type behind that common data set, and you'll see like a 30, 35, 40 page PDF separated into years. And if you scroll down and look at section C of any common data set, there's the information that you're looking for as it relates to admissions. You can look at competitive test scores. You can see if a university is monitoring demonstrating interest. You can look at last year's incoming class and look at how many of those were in the top 10%, top quartile. You can even find useful information like out-of-state acceptance rates, out-of-state enrollment numbers. There's so much information that you can kind of get lost into with the common data set. But now when you're looking at the CDS for the University of Texas, they don't tend to be very transparent about everything. And I'll also say, you know, UT is one of those big state flagship schools, and I think I read a stat, something like 67% of Texas students graduating from a Texas public school or have got UT on the map. So it's an incredibly popular, wildly popular school to get into these days. But when we're looking at the common data set, what factor is more important than others, you'll notice that UT considers everything pretty much equally. Now that can be misleading. Certainly we do know that one of the most important factors to the University of Texas is a GPA. You have to be able to get good grades. Behind that GPA is going to be the level of rigor. Did you take classes that were easy A's, or did you take classes that were harder A's? You know, your senior year, did you, instead of going into that multivariable calculus class that your high school offers, did you wrap up with BC Calculus and pivot to AP Stats, that sort of thing? Especially important for the major you're applying to. The third most important thing that UT is going to look at is class rank. You have to keep in mind they must admit X number of students for their freshman class from the top 6% of their high school. So GPA, rigor, rank, and then fourth is going to be fit to major. You know, so, but I don't want to water down test scores or how important the essays are. This is all factored. This is a variable in the equation, but it is a variable in that fit to major. What I mean by that is, depending on the field of study you're going to go into, they'll look at your test scores and see if you're showing indicators of, you know, solid math and science expertise, especially if you're going into a STEM major with those essays. This is an opportunity to highlight your strengths and reference examples and opportunities in which you've been innovative or you've made an impact in your community as it directly relates to the field of study you want to go into. All of this is fit to major. So while everything is on the table for consideration when you're applying to the University of Texas, it is a little bit misleading to look at the chart that you're referencing, Garrett, and see that they're considering everything equally. That's not necessarily the case, because you got to have a good GPA. You're going to have great rigor, a good class rank, and if the fit to major isn't there, then, you know, there's not going to be much room for them to admit your teenager into their class. They are really looking for students that have solid leadership in the field of study that they want to go into, and you can highlight this in essays, through test scores, and so forth. So, good question. And I do recommend everybody take a look at the common data set for the colleges that they're applying into, to really make sure that you're looking at objective criteria and equipping yourself with data points to really understand, is this university going to be David, my last question, is the parent of a sophomore, and how should we think of acceptance rates for universities overall versus key departments such as engineering and business? So this goes back to something that I often tell families. If you go online and you Google acceptance rates, which we don't recommend doing, but if you just look at acceptance rates, it can be really misleading for a number of reasons. Most colleges and universities are not going to release to the public department statistics in terms of those acceptance rates. Partly because the more popular majors have the lowest acceptance rates, and these colleges are not wanting to scare everybody off. Colleges are a business, and they're in the business of getting that application. The most popular colleges in America get more applicants than any other college or university. Perception is a reality, and universities, people want to be part of something that is competitive and challenging. And so universities often are not transparent about their internal data points because, of course, then that opens up other questions as well. But if you're applying to a STEM major, you have to assume and be advised that this is going to be an ultra competitive or more competitive choice of major than any of the other fields. I'm not saying psychology, social work, public relations, these are non-STEM majors. I'm not saying they're easy to get into. They may be less impacted than others. But if you're applying to computer science, anything with engineering, business, which is a STEM major, or you're applying to pre-professional programs like pre-med, then these do tend to be incredibly selective. My advice for you, David, this is a good opportunity for your teenager to have a conversation with their admissions officer about this and get an understanding for the typical profile for the student that was admitted into that particular major. But you can actually take it one step further, because as I was just talking to you about Noni, a lot of this is relative to the high school you're graduating from. So what I would really encourage you is to have a conversation with the counselor at your high school about the students from years past who applied to the colleges that your teenager is applying to, and the same majors, who got in and what was their typical profile. So we want to level the playing field. Let's look at students from your high school that applied to the same colleges, same majors, and what were their stats? What were the types of classes they took? What were their test scores? What was their role in clubs and activities? That's going to give you a much better insight than just Googling acceptance rates at universities and seeing that this is not being reflective of majors, because some majors are more impacted than others. And then even if you do ask an admissions officer typical stats for a student that gets admitted into business school or computer science, those stats may be higher or lower than the stats from students at your high school. There is a lot of science behind this, and now you know why families work with a college consultant, so that you don't have to bury yourself into the data and figure all of this out. But, at the end of the day, your teenager's only going to apply to college one time. That's it. And they got to get it right, because they don't get a second chance in this experience. And applying to a balanced college list will save the day, but understanding what is a true safety, what is a true target, what is a true reach, what is actually considered an extreme reach, really educating yourself on these different types of tiers so that you can go through the application experience and feel in control. That definitely is very helpful. And hopefully you all have appreciated this. If you did find benefit in this, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, definitely share it on your Facebook, and register for one of our college planning presentations. They all include question and answers. I got these questions from one of our more recent presentations that we did. So definitely register, submit your questions. These are always fun and awesome to answer because a lot of the families out there have the same questions. So we're here for you. If you're interested in being one of our scholars, you can schedule your discovery call online. That's when we'll go over our pricing, packages, our timeline, and so forth. And hopefully the rest of you guys have an awesome day. And folks in Texas, enjoy the fall weather. Take care. Bye-bye.